So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look, this is a GameFound preview, that's what we're calling it. We're taking a look at The Hunt.
The Hunt. How do you say that in German?
Das
Glockenspiel.
That's a great question, and you should have asked me and I would have looked up. I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe that was something we should have done. Sorry, Matthias.
Yeah, oh well. So this is from a company called Salt and Pepper Games. They did Resist, which was a solitaire game designed by David Thompson.
Same art. They use the same artist, Albert Montes.
And it's beautiful from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
That was a solitaire game. This is a two-player game, and it's the format that we have it at, two-player only. Yeah. So this is a hidden information game, and this is the Royal Navy trying to search the South Atlantic for the Grafspee. So this game, it's designed by Matthias Kramer and Engen Kunter. And they are, so Matthias Kramer, or Kramer if you're Americans, he designed Weimar, which was a massive Euro game that is extremely good.
A very long game.
Very long.
But very good. Very interesting, very unique. Very unique.
I should have hated that game.
And you liked it.
I loved that game. It was excellent.
And we played that for like 5.5 hours.
Big, long game. Yeah. He also did Watergate. Which was by Capstone Games. That was a political CDG, little small format, kind of like this, right? Little box, small game, very quick playing. This kind of fits that same bill as Watergate. So this is like a 40 minutes to an hour at most, that first play. It's probably going to be shorter on subsequent plays, and some games could be very short if you find them early.
Depends on how aggressive the Grafspee is, and whether or not they take chances.
And a little bit of luck thrown in there, and it could be over very quickly. But a short format, lunch break hour style game at most. But this one, it's this hidden movement style game that's a little bit in vogue at the moment, which I appreciate because I think it's a very cool mechanic.
Well, we just played about 6 months ago, Sniper Elite, hidden movements as well. Lots of similarities there in a totally different
we also
setting and format.
Mind management.
Yes, hidden movement as well.
So I think
it's a unique mechanic because it actually creates a lot of tension and a lot of thought. You got to think through what you're doing. In some ways, you got to kind of track through your mind where they could or couldn't be. Although that's very challenging.
Yeah, but it's a style of game that rewards investment.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is just a bit of presence and focus during the time you're playing the game.
Yeah.
Some games it's kind of like, I'll do this, I'll do that, who cares? Just kind of play it. This one, it's like, all right.
Yeah.
He put a yellow disc here. That means he could be here.
Last turn, so he's got to be around here.
And he spent a couple of movement points and did this. So there's a little bit of that thinking it out and then trying to pounce on them, which is really awesome.
And the thinking it out, the other interesting thing is there's literally some mousetraps, right, moving across the board. Not figured or literally.
No.
But those British freighters are traps. You, as the Grafspee, have got to hunt those down.
Yeah, you're trying to get that.
You got to sink 5 of them.
And the Royal Navy's trying to protect those.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's never less than 2 on the board.
There's always 2 at the beginning of the German turn.
There's opportunities via event cards where you can force a third one on. And third becomes very hard for the British to protect.
Very hard.
They have to make a choice. They've only got typically 2 ships. But they do have the option for a third.
The third one's very hard to get on board.
It takes a while. But it's hidden movement, but you do know there's an objective. And the Grafspee's kind of making progress on those.
Yeah.
And each of those freighters that sinks to the bottom of the South Atlantic puts the tension, ratchets it up a little bit.
Yes.
It makes you think a little harder about what you're doing. It makes you think about how you're using your limited hand of events and op points, action points, I think they're called in the game. Just a very unique setting that creates, I think, a really interesting experience. I enjoyed the heck out of this. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and they've done a really good job of keeping it short, and the board itself is both very small and also quite big.
And that's a very interesting way to say it, but it absolutely is true.
Yeah. When you play it, you'll understand what that kind of really means. There's not a lot of spaces on the board.
There's about 25 spaces.
Well, they're numbered, right?
They are, but they're not.
I think there's
Are they in order?
Well, no.
So it's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, see, there's just
It's kind
four.
of odd, but there's 30,
yeah.
I think there's 36 spaces.
36 spaces.
That can be moved into at least. But like, you know, I've got a couple forces out and a couple freighters. You're occupying one with the Graf Spee. There's the Alt mark. And like, all of a sudden, you're trying to come near to those as the Germans to try and sink the freighters. You're only playing in a small portion of the border at any given time.
Yeah.
And it's very tight. But then also, like, if you lose them, you're like, oh man, there's a number of places they could have gone, and with your limited action points that you have in your hand a card, you know, I can move a space and search, I can move 2 spaces and search, but then I got another force and I can move with that one, but I don't have enough to search with that one.
Yeah, typically you're always one shy of what you really want to do.
Yeah, and that makes the board small that you can act in, and that means there's a lot of empty space that you can't get to. It's like, so it's really neat from that standpoint.
The other thing that I think really compounds the difficulty for the British is the concept of the Graf Spee has to announce how many points you're using for the different actions. Movement.
Yes.
You can spend 1 point to move 1 space. You can spend 2 points to move 2 spaces and 4 to move 3. But you have to say that at the beginning.
Yep.
I'm spending 4. So in your mind, you're like, okay, he can move 3 spaces, but did he only move 2? Or did he just give up this turn, not move at all?
Yeah, you can bluff with your movement.
That, to me, was the most interesting part as playing the Germans. I found it very interesting because a couple times I was right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Like I was in the middle of the hurricane's eye, and I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to move. But I'm going to pay those 3 points, and I'm going to make you think I at least move 1 or 2, maybe 3 to get away. And then that kind of just wiped the slate clean.
Yes.
You had no idea after that. And I could see it in your face when you move into an area where like, okay, he's probably around here. And this is the way that all these head movement games. And you spend your 1 to do the search and you're like, oh, he didn't put out any discs because he's not nearby. And then the other cool thing is when you do the search, I get to decide, I have to put it either in my spot or an adjacent spot. So that's like 6 spaces, 7 spaces that I could put those into. But it gives you a feeling, but not enough of a feeling to hone in on it.
You've got this space, but then, to me, is that this edge of this?
Yes.
Like, I have to decide, I have an extra layer of where that is.
Yep.
I liked that about this game versus something like Sniper Elite. So Sniper Elite, you did not have time to stand still.
No, you had to get to objectives that weren't moving.
And they were on opposite sides of the board, and that game was a time crunch. Like
it was.
If you weren't moving kind of at full pelt the whole time, you will get cornered and you will die.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, because of the limited actions in it, you can afford to do that bluff to sit still, because you're not necessarily totally going to give yourself away.
Yep.
And I like that extra layer of being able to bluff your opponent in it.
Yep.
I think that's really neat. And then the Germans also have that further layer of bluff. You have a hand limit of 5 cards if you're next to the Alt mark, which is a supply ship, or you have a hand limit of 3 cards if you're not adjacent to that ship.
Yeah.
But if you're adjacent to it, you can say, you don't have to draw those cards.
I'm just going to draw 1 card.
So I've got 3.
I could have drawn 5, but I would have given myself.
And it's like you can hurt your hand and your cards, but then it's not a dead giveaway of where you are on the board.
Yep.
So those extra layers I really like.
And there were a couple times where I had to make that decision. Okay, you generally know where I am. It was pretty obvious. I decided I'm going to draw up to 5 because I was close to the alt mark. I had moved. It was kind of interesting trying to figure out where to put the alt mark to make it make sense and make it work, but also to put the onus on you to really think about, okay, where is he? Very rarely did I draw the whole up to the 5 cards.
I think you did it once.
And I did it when I had the opportunity to really put it away. So the other thing I like about the way the freighters move, they can pop up at any place. There are 9 of them, we decided.
Yes, 9 total.
And you draw them from a mug, and they can come in at Great Britain, and you'll notice they have many different arrows saying there's a lot coming in there and a couple moving out.
Yeah, they always leave from 06 from Portsmouth.
Yep.
They can come in from any other area.
And the others also, so you'll get one in Brazil or one in I can't remember where
South Africa,
South Africa,
or Argentina.
Brazil, or Argentina, and you know, okay, they're going to South Africa, so I'm gonna kind of mill down here and get that one. You got to remember, there's one, maybe two more that are moving away from you. So it's a real, there's an onus on each side to do what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a really enjoyable time with this. We've talked a lot. I will show you how this works, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the board. Again, very small format board. Hexes, this is the South Atlantic, so you have the eastern Cape of Africa all the way down here, and then it's abstracted, but this is the South African hex down here, and then we have the western part of South America, so mainly Brazil here, Argentina kind of down in this corner, and then this little hex up here represents Great Britain, but you know, obviously geographically you're going to sail around Africa, around the Med, around France to get there. So yeah, the Germans have a little holding box for their reserves and a little space for their search plane, which is either ready or it's broken, or if it's damaged forever, that would be very sad, but it can be. And this is a game of having these freighters that start from AR, Argentina, and it has to go towards GB, Great Britain. And let me get another one out, so we have a better example. This one starts at Great Britain and is going towards Brazil, so it's going to start here. And basically, you're going to have Force G popping around, trying to escort these guys as they move, and also trying to hunt for the Graf Spee. The Graf Spee is off map, and the German player is going to be writing down which hex it is in, keeping that hidden, obviously. So currently, let's say they're in hex 32. Well, yeah, hex 32. You don't put them on the map, but you just write down 32 on the piece of paper. And then you have a hand of 5 cards, and a German player on their turn, they're going to either spend for ops, which is this little number, or they're going to trigger the event. And let's just say, let's spend some ops. So we've got 5 ops on this card, and we're in space 32. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to say, I'm going to spend either 1, 2, or 4 of their action points to move 1, 2, or only 3 spaces. Costs 4 AP to move 3 spaces. But you don't say where you're moving, and you just say, I'm going to spend, 2 ops to move 2 spaces. And then you kind of write down, hey, I'm going to, where you're going to end up or where you are. You can optionally not move at all. You just say, I'm going to spend 2 ops to move 2 spaces and sit where you are. That's a level of bluff, which is fun. And then you're going to spend 2 ops to perform a search to try and find these guys. So if you do end up having moved 1, 2, 3, so let's spend 4 ops to move 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. So I would write down 34 on my sheet. Then I have to spend 2 ops to search. Well, I've only got 1 left, so I can't do it. But I might then put 1 into reserves, so that next time I could pop a search in there. But when I do a search, I have to spend 2 ops, and I'm going to roll a d6. And I'm trying to roll a 5+. Very difficult to search. However, if you spend an extra op, you can commit your plane to it, and that means that you search at a 2+. So that would have been a success, right? Great, we succeed. And if this is on its own, with the Graf Spee, and you search and find it, it is immediately destroyed and sunk, and that is 1 of your 5 victory points as the Germans. The problem is that the British know exactly where you are. And if we did have to spend 4 movement points, and they kind of knew we were over here, they know we've gone a long way, and we can't leave that space. So they've got us pinned down, so now they're going to start moving now and trying to find us there. And so that's the neat part of this game is you can be in 31, you can spend 4 ops to move 3 spaces, and you can move, search, kill, and then you still got 2 movement points left that you paid for, and you can bugger off over here, and great. The Royal Navy has no idea where you are. So there's lots of that kind of gaminess to it, but now this is destroyed, unfortunately. We got to spend another op to try to commit to that, to repair it. So, hey, I'm going to spend an op to and you're trying to roll above the number of cards you have removed from the game. So early on, you're going to have your plane getting used and repaired a lot. But if you start blowing through these events that go out of the game, this die roll is going to get harder and harder and harder to the point at which you fail and it'll be permanently removed. You can never get that bonus ever again, which would suck. That would be not good. So, the British, on the other hand, on their turn, they're going to move all of these freighters one space closer towards their target. So this guy's got to go one space towards GB. He's got to go one space going up this way. This guy's going from GB to Brazil. He's just going to go right here because he's got to get to this space. Great. Now, in a very similar fashion, you have a hand of cards, and we're going to draw a card, or we're going to play a card. So let's play this one. We've got 4 ops, and very similar. We can spend 2 ops to get this force H one space closer off the map, so we get a second force. And then we've got 2 ops. We can move 1 space, and then we can spend 1 to search. It's much easier for the Royal Navy to search because it's cheaper. They're going to roll on a 5+. Hey, we rolled a 5+. So, if the Graf Spee is in this space, they must announce it, and at that point, we then go to the end game phase, which is a battle. And we like have a hand of cards, and we shoot it out, and whoever takes the most damage loses. But they'll say, oh, I'm not there, because remember, they moved over here. Like, cool, I now don't know where they are. Now, if I had ops left to spend, I might discard a card from my hand and spend 1 op to do this. I spend 1 op to either get +1 to my search roll, which I didn't need, so I didn't do that, or we've got this little hint symbol. And what this means is that the German player must put one of these hint cylinders either in or adjacent to the space that they're in. It can't go in a space with alt mark, it's already got hint marker on it, and it can't go in a space that already has a hint marker on it. Why that's important is because you can spend a couple of cards to do a couple of these, or you might get one from an event and then drop a card to do it. So if you get a couple of those out, you can figure out, hey, they're in or adjacent to all of these, so they have to be here, right? You can narrow it down if you had a ton of ops and were able to really do that. And it's a way to pin them down and then move in and try and search. So it's always about, trying to shrink that net and get them in and get as much intel as you can. Sometimes you're going to have to allow them to sink a couple boats, and that's going to give you a much better idea of where they're operating on the map. Because if they're sinking boats up here, they're not down here. And that's a really long way to get there and a big use of their cards. And, it helps you to be a bit more guided when you start losing ships. Now, if they sink 5 ships, you lose the game. But if you're able to escort 5 ships safely to their destinations, you win the game. And so that's a neat aspect of it. You can set these escorts. The more of these you get on, you can escort these a lot easier, and it's a bit riskier for them to come and try and search for you, because when they search for you, you might play as a reaction Harwood's intuition, and like, oh, I'm gonna get this guy, and they roll really well, and they're like, sweet, I found you, and you're like, haha. Play as a reaction when the Graf Spee attacks a freight ship in a space where a force is located, you perform a search with a +1. So he thinks, oh, I'm sinking this guy and I'm going to win the game. But instead you roll as the Royal Navy to search at a +1. We found them and we immediately do battle. And you can, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat in those instances. So if you can get these forces out, you can make it a bit riskier, but then the German players they have a card where they can put a 3rd freighter out, and they're just like easy pickings at that point. And so the game really tilts. It's very, very neat. But that's generally speaking how the core of this game works, and what we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the gameplay. I had a blast with this.
Yeah, it was very, very playable.
Considering it's this small format little game,
yep.
The mechanics are really tight in it. Mm-hmm. The only beef that I have
the rulebook
is that this is a prototype.
Yeah.
And the rules are very obviously a translation from Spanish.
Yes.
There was a couple things that the play aid for you
contradicted what was in the rules.
Directly contradicts by something that's in the
Yeah.
rules. So we played it by the rules because we figured that the rules PDF is more up to date.
Yeah.
And that was to do with discarded cards versus removed from the game cards.
Yeah.
But then there were just some of the phraseology, some of the wording. So hopefully, with the GameFound, they'll get some more funding and they'll get a translator to kind of tighten that stuff up.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's going to pass editing and then we'll be all good to go. But we were able to learn this from the rules.
Not
we
hard.
were able to play it.
Yep.
Even as a prototype, the artwork's great.
Oh, the art makes the game. Just to be frankly honest, there's cards here that, these are gorgeous, right?
The artwork's wonderful, and it's that great style as well.
And this was the same style in Resist, same artist, and they're just fantastic. The other thing I really like about the cards, there's choices to be made.
Yeah.
They have anywhere from 1 to 5 action points, but they also have an event printed on them. Some of the events are mandatory. When you play that card, you have to play the event.
Yeah, it's only for the event.
Only for the event. But you have to make that choice. Do I use the AP, doing what I need to do, or do I play these events? And these events are very powerful. A lot of times they break the game, right? For instance,
it's rules breaking stuff.
For instance, I had a couple that said, when you are found, make it so you're not found. So it's like, it was a smoke screen, or I'm trying to remember what the other... anyway, it's like something comes up a fog bank, and I disappear and slip away. You had some cards kind of like that.
Yeah, where it's like, if you search and you find a freighter that's being escorted, there's a force in the same space, I get to immediately search at a +1, and we might then immediately do battle, and that triggers the end game.
Right.
So we're like, you thought you were going to win, but it's like, haha,
yeah,
I'm going to shoot you with my guns. Different story.
It's just really unique. The events, there's a lot of really cool ones too. Like I had a couple that you played to the tabletop.
Yes.
And they sat there and I could use them when I needed them. One of them was really cool. It was move a freighter 1 space. And I'm like, I finally used that. And it was very powerful because I didn't have to spend my AP to move to you.
I had one of those and it was... it just like gave me 1 AP in reserve, which would have been nice.
Okay, which
but
you didn't normally have reserves.
No, the British one, and so it was like, that's nice, but it was really hard to sacrifice a turn to put
Yeah,
that
and it was hard for me to sacrifice for that turn, but I felt like
that's strong.
That's going to play a big... So there were some cards like that. The one comment I made about a couple of the cards, I'm not a huge fan when it's so hard to do something, you give me a card that can blow that up.
Right.
I struggle with that.
Sure.
So when you found me, I'm like, that's pretty damn hard to do.
I got to roll a 5 or a 6 on a D6, and I'm famously not good at rolling.
Yeah, and usually you only had a modifier of maybe +1.
At best.
Very rarely. So I basically said, nope, you didn't find me. And I'm like, yes, it's a card that I had to give away, and it was a 5 value card.
And I have to know that you have that.
But it's just, I'm not always a big fan of that. And there were 2 of those in my deck. So something to think about. But this game plays so quickly.
Yeah.
30 to 40 minutes.
You set it up, play it again.
Set it up and play it again. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's really tense. It's really engaging. I really found this interesting.
Yeah.
I want to play it immediately again. I'm going to think about it. And there's just so many unique things. That asymmetric, right?
Totally different.
You have a different set of skills. I thought your task forces were kind of interesting. You started with 1 on the board, and then...
yeah, so you start with 1 on the board, and then the other one is on the 3 space. So you get it 4, and then it's off the map. And
so you have to commit to doing that for 2 turns.
And the other one's like all the way up here. But I had some events that were just like, hey, move it, and then do some other stuff. So I did that.
So I like that, because in some ways that's a timer. If you ever get 4 ships out there, that's going to be real tough. Or was it 4 ships or 3? 3 ships, that's going to be, because then you can protect almost every...
You can protect everything and have a guy sailing around trying to...
That's pretty powerful, but I like that it was hard for you to do that.
Very hard.
You would have to commit to that and really hamper yourself for several turns. The other thing I liked was the Germans have a plane that I'm assuming was launched from the Graf Spee, but maybe, and you had to ready it, so you had to spend some of your AP to do that. Then you had to use it in your search to gain a +2, and that made it almost so you couldn't fail a
Very
search.
hard to fail a search.
I had to roll a 1 or a 2.
I
had to get 5. Had to get a 5.
Normally, yes.
But in some instances...
With the plane, you search on a 2+.
Yeah, 2+. Just really interesting. I also like that I could use my ops as reserves, so I kind of built those up knowing, hey, one time I can really do a couple things. Just really unique, a really great game. beautiful, components are great, and this is just a prototype. But it's a small format game. I like to call these big games in little boxes. I mean, you're getting a big game in a box that you can put under your arm and carry it around to work and play it over your lunch hour with someone.
And I don't know, especially of any hidden movement games in a box this small that are this rewarding. There might be some, but this is...
I mean, the only one I really know that I really like, well, there are a couple, Hunt for the Ring, but that's a big box.
Yeah, big box.
That's a great game. Sniper Elite, big box. I can't think of any small. There probably are.
What was that one game? They Come Unseen, massive
box. Oh, that's a huge box. Probably didn't need to be a huge box, but the board was big.
Yeah.
That was a submarine game, so very unique. I'm not going to say that one side has the advantage over the other, but it feels slightly easier for the Germans. Just because...
But they're so brittle, though.
You're right. I get caught, I'm done.
You get one, yeah.
I'm generally done.
And then you get to this battle phase, and it's this duel of a hand of cards, and it's kind of a crapshoot at that point.
Although the one battle we had, I had 2 5s, a 4, and a 3, so I won.
But if you start fighting with Force K, they're at +1 to all the cards.
Yep.
That's
and that becomes...
advantage.
I liked the Force... Is that G?
Yeah.
They had +1/2.
So they win every tie.
They win every tie, and we tied at least once. Anyway, the combat, there were a couple cards where I had, it's like jump the battle, and then I get +1 on all of my cards. So based on what I had in my hand, I was thinking about attacking you. I decided not to because I was having fun moving around, but I could have got rid of one of your ships.
And that would be devastating.
Really hurt you. Very good game. I think the design team did a great job here. This is going to be a winner, I think.
So, The Hunt from Salt and Pepper Games. Think about pressing that big green button if you're interested, but appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.